go. After this spot, you are a radio star, sir.
A 2-year, 24,000 nationwide warranty on all repairs. Run by Freedom Farm Ministries. Profits at Freedom Auto Tech help men escape the...
Well, we may get some crappy weather this weekend, Jimmy.
I haven't really looked at the weather.
Yeah, it's supposed to be really some bad storms tomorrow, and it's supposed to get, could be flooding over the weekend. Here we go, Jim.
Good morning. Welcome to Recovery Talk, Hope and Help for the Hurting. My favorite day of the week, Thursday, 10:30. Come here and we'll be highlighting guests to share their experience in the world of substance abuse and addiction. And actually, it's a special week, kind of month, because this is the anniversary month of this show. I cannot believe we've been doing this for a year. We've missed a couple shows here and there, but we've been able to consistently be here every Thursday pretty much. And we've had a wide range of different guests, guys in the Freedom Farm program, in the Carries Home for Women program, and other programs that their names are escaping me at the moment. But we've also had people that don't personally struggle with substance abuse come and share. Last week we had Todd, that is the magic man that's behind the scenes here on the show, come and share his experience and desire to be a part of the world of recovery. I usually take a minute to give out a shout out to our sponsor, Freedom Auto Tech. But if you are listening, the commercial just happened right before I started the show. So anyway. I felt it appropriate I've been asked by a couple people, hey, Jim, when are you going to share your story? And, it's never, after years of sharing it, and, sometimes you just kind of, I don't know, I guess I'm going through a season in life where it's not the funnest thing for me to do in the world, but I don't mind it. I'm not ashamed of it or anything like that. Sometimes I just don't like bringing attention to myself. But anyway, it just seemed to be on my heart, and thought it was appropriate time, and with the anniversary of the show, that today would be a day for me. So I'm in here by myself. If you're on Facebook Live watching, or if you're on the road, you can always come and check out the show later if you missed a portion of it or whatever. Facebook, go to Recovery Talk, and you can see this show today or any of the previous shows over the past year. Man, it's kind of funny to say that. But, the guy that started it all with me, Mike Kelly, he's over here, and he saw me solo, and he said, hey, you know what, Jimmy, I'll get a pair of headphones on and put my mic on just in case it's appropriate during the show. So we might hear something from Mike. He's just sitting right above me. We're sharing the atmosphere in here. But anyway, my childhood growing up, the way I remember it and I think of it is that I basically grew up in almost, small town American dream. I grew up in a town, you believe it or not, called Green Acres City in Palm Beach County, Florida. Palm Beach County is a large county in Florida. That's actually where the Winter White House is.
I have to ask, was there a Mr. Haney in the U.S.?
No, there's no Mr. Haney. But interestingly enough, my father was the mayor of the city. So my dad was the mayor. I'm one of 4 kids. I'm the oldest. And, when I say, typical American dream, we had a little single family home. Obviously, we were in a little bit of a, small town spotlight, my dad being in politics. And we were afforded to go to private Christian school. My parents were churchgoers. So nothing about any of that, that I trace back as being, attributing. I was a Boy Scout. I was involved in youth group. I did a lot of. I had friends in the neighborhood that I still talk to this day. My neighbor growing up, Rick Sosa, he may watch this at some point. He's a battalion chief down in Stuart, Florida. Well, he's semi-retired now. He's hurt his neck real bad, so he's not able to work. But he was the best man at my wedding 6 years ago. So I grew up with him, grew up with his brother. Like I said, I had all the opportunities and what you might say a basic normal childhood with really nothing inherently wrong with any of that to be a cause of my issues. But I do tell people this. I had no reason. I had literally, if I had a birthday party, 20 people would show up, and they all were my friends. But if I look back on it now, I can honestly say I never felt that anybody liked me or accepted me. I never felt like I was truly accepted or liked. Where did that feeling come from? I don't know, but that's truly the way I felt. So I could have 20 friends, but I never really believed I did. So it's very strange. I understand, but and I don't think that's very abnormal with people wondering about their acceptance and their identity growing up, trying to navigate their life. But I was very sensitive to it. So anyway, through life, growing up, my identity crisis, I guess, in a way, started to, in my about 12, 13 years old, started to drift off into the, trying out of some alcohol here and there and whatnot. And then, my parents did divorce when I was about 14 years old. And at that time, we had moved to a different suburb of Palm Beach County called Wellington. I, for the first time, was in public school. It's kind of funny. I tell people, if you grew up in private school, you have this like image of public school, like you're about to go to the state penitentiary or something. You're kind of told these stories of, being attacked in hallways or stuff, but it was nothing like that. It was just like the private school I went to, except for I didn't have to wear a uniform anymore. So that was new. And anyway, I went to, but you got a guy that has a hard time relating to people and feeling like he truly is accepted and liked by people, and then you take him out of a place he's been for most of his, all his life at this point, and put him in a whole new environment. I was ripe for crisis. By the time I got to high school, I was actively searching, trying to find drugs. I was, finding marijuana. Pretty embarrassing. The first time I ever bought marijuana, or so we thought. I had a couple friends. We had, been talking for weeks, and some guy set us up on the football team and sold us a bag of oregano. And pretty embarrassing because we went to school the next week, and we were in the gym, and a lot of the guys were working out. We were in workout room and all that. And the coach of the football team came up and mocked us. He said, "Hey, I got a couple of good red sauce recipes if you need one," and he was laughing along with the other guys. And that was pretty embarrassing. But that kind of drove me bound and determined to really finally, do this. So at some point in high school, I started to dabble in drugs. And, my high school career, I actually never liked school. I don't think I ever liked school ever. I hated school. Todd said something interesting last week. It may be because I never really felt challenged. I'm not trying to brag about intelligence or anything like that, but school was very easy for me. If I just sat in a classroom and listened, I could, do well. I could pass. And actually, it's been a gift, I guess, for a long time. I never had to really study much. I literally never did homework. Later, I'll tell you, I went to college, and that was pretty difficult because I had to do some homework at college. But anyway, I was in high school, and I also discovered sex in high school, and with that going on and dabbling in drugs, and my parents divorced now, and I had a car and a part-time job. I was working at a Chinese restaurant. I was 16, and I just stopped really going to school. I dropped out of high school when I was in 10th grade. Then shortly after, I moved out on my own at 17 years old, and was working 2 jobs at that point. And God bless my mom, she made sure I got a GED. And I tell you, if you don't have a high school diploma, go get a GED. The community resources out there to help you do that, and it does open up a lot more for you if you just at least have that piece of paper. So I got a GED, and I was basically living on my own, At this point, I had done my drug career. It consisted of, marijuana, drinking, and some psychedelics. You would say did mushrooms and took LSD before and things like that. 17, kind of one of the highlights of my formative years, I guess you'd say, is at 17, I went with 14 other people to the Woodstock concert, the 25th anniversary of Woodstock. That was quite an event, a story for another day of that whole experience. But imagine 15 people in a 15-passenger van driving from South Florida to New York. It was literally a mile from the original Woodstock location, and I really don't remember much of the ride up. Anyway, that was a pretty. I did that at 17, so I was already kind of living this kind of free life, searching, I guess you can say. And I had an event happen to me that kind of was pretty significant. What happened was I was working at this Chinese restaurant. I found out some of the waiters there did cocaine, and one of the people that worked, the bartender, was actually a substitute teacher from the high school I went to. And I found out they all did cocaine. I just happened to mention it in conversation with some friends of mine, and a friend of mine said, "Well, I can get you cocaine." He goes, "Find out how much they'll get you cocaine." I was like, "Well, why don't you tell me how much you can get it to me for? I'm not going to tell you how much you're going to buy it for." You know, I was not stupid, so I found out these people would pay double what I could get it for. So I started to bring cocaine to work and sell it to the waiters and the substitute teacher of mine. And here I am, 17 years old, slinging cocaine, and never tried this stuff. It was one of those lines I kind of was scared to cross. And one day the guy was at my house about 3 months into this thing. I was making pretty good money doing this. Showing up at work, I would make basically $100 right off just the drugs I brought, and then whatever I made that night during work. So anyway, one day they were in my room at my house. I was 17, like I said. They were making bags for me for the week because you like to give me my week's supply and then just have to deal with me once a week. And while we were in there, three guys, they both put out some cocaine on a plate and did some. And they said, "Hey, Quigley, you want to try it?" And I felt that pressure. I wanted these guys to like me, so I did it, and I liked it. And long story short, I was making money and quickly started owing this guy money, and then it just started turning. But anyway, what ended up happening is I was at a party. I was in the midst of all this stuff, and I got into this giant fist fight, which the guy broke my orbital bone around my eye. So I ended up having to move home and all that stuff. And kind of like I had just gotten close to being bad with this cocaine, and then this happened, and it kind of took me out of it all. We got a break coming up, and I'll just pick up the story when I get there. But when we get back, this kind of fight kind of took me out of the whole thing temporarily, and that's when I'll pick up this story. Stay with us. We'll be back here in just a few minutes. See you in a minute.
I can't believe, Jimmy, that you, my God. I just can't believe it, man.
Yeah.
Dude,
I'm only at 17 years old at this point.
dude, I don't even know how you're still alive.
Yeah.
And you see how you said that about the oregano? You brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead now, and his temper got him killed. He got set up. Johnny Bassalone, he went up, Billy Bostek, he went by the name of Billy Fury later on in life. And Billy got taken like that, and we got on the school bus, and Joey Ianna goes, "Billy, what did you get?" And he goes, "Billy." He said, that's oregano, I'm telling you. I could just tell looking at it. And Billy goes, "Are you sure?" He goes, and it was in a cellophane packet where the cigarettes used to come in. He goes, "Let me smell it." Joanna Carey takes a whiff. He goes, "Dude, you got taken. It was a nickel bag, luckily." Billy looked at the bus driver. His name was Charlie. He used to give us cigarettes if we wanted to smoke. He goes, "Chuck, can I ask you a favor?" He said, "Don't pull away yet. I got something to take care of." He got off the bus. This is in the school parking lot. The kid was a junior. Billy's a freshman. He's a pretty big, solid freshman. He countered the guy as he was in his car. He goes, "Hey, man, you ripped me off. I want my money back." The guy, he didn't even give the guy a chance to talk. Next thing you know, Billy's right hand just starts nailing this guy in the head, and the car's moving. And he hit another car, and Billy's just wailing on this guy, and went and got his money back, got back on the bus, and said, "We can go now, man." The next day, the principal called me. He goes, "Nah," he says something about my sister being cheap. Swear to God, it's a true story. Billy's temper got him killed when we were older. He got set up at a bar, and it was two brothers that ran it. It was New Year's Eve. And he had beaten the tar out of this one guy's brother. They wanted to get even with him, and they brought him in as a peace offering. And the one brother who tried to be the mediator, well, he was in on it too. And before Billy could make a move, the one guy he had beat the tar out of pulled out a sawed-off shotgun from me to you and blew his head off. Killed him on the spot. They both went to jail for first-degree murder. Here we go.
Hey, welcome back to Recovery Talk, Open Hope for the Hurting. Don't forget about our sponsor, Freedom Auto Tech. Freedom Auto Tech is a professional shop here, mechanic shop here in town, ready to service your car professionally, and you can know as a customer at the same time the profits and proceeds of working on your car are going to support men in recovery through Freedom Farm Ministries. So, get two things done at once. Get good service on your car and support a good cause all at the same time. 828-355-4434 is the number to call for Freedom Auto Tech, 828-355-4434. Anyway, back to my story. Like I said, I was about 17, probably maybe 18 now, but starting to go into some depths of, selling cocaine, doing cocaine, and liking it. And it all gets stopped by me getting into a fight and having to have surgery and all of that, losing my jobs, having to move back home. So, but obviously living at home didn't last very long when you're kind of rebelling to the degree I was. Parents aren't going to put up with it very much. I forget who I was living with. I bounced around with mom and dad. I still had my 3 siblings, that were still living with them. And I probably lived with whoever they weren't living with because I wasn't a very good influence. But anyway, it didn't last long. I moved back out to another apartment, and I got a job. And this started kind of just years of doing this. I went from that type of lifestyle, drinking and pot and doing some cocaine, to discovering what's called the rave scene down there, which was a pretty intense nightclub, after hours, lots of a drug called ecstasy or designer drugs. And I went into a phase of that for quite a long time. Thought I kind of found my people because it was all kind of modern day hippie type movement. That's the way I kind of explain it, kind of people sticking together in large groups and everybody hanging out with each other. But after about a year of that, it doesn't, you start to see people's true sides, and it stopped being fun, and pretty amazing event happened. I thought I got a girl pregnant. I was with a girl, and I thought I got her pregnant, and I was 20 years old at this point, and reality hit. It was like, I got to do something here. I'm about to have a child. And I kind of had a moment of clarity, you might say, which led me into pursuing something that, as I was growing up with my father being the mayor, he loved the fire department. We would always go to these fireman competitions and stuff like that. So I kind of was like, hey, you know what? I want to be a fireman. So at 20 years old, I swore off drugs, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something with myself. And I went to EMT school. And I realized actually I can do this kind of thing, and that led to me going to fire academy. 21 years old, I was a certified firefighter EMT in the state of Florida. Now, I never stopped drinking at this point, and I did drink heavily during this point. But you could kind of say that whatever I was doing as far as substance abuse, it was fairly at bay, and it was fairly normal. I did drink too much, but it wasn't controlling my life at that moment. But after doing that, I really didn't have any motivation or really the skills on how to interview, so I didn't get a job as a firefighter, and I started to backtrack. And in kind of a moment of desperation, needing a job, I was in the paper. We used to get jobs by looking at the classifieds in the paper. So I was looking in the classified, I saw this thing called Fire Sprinkler Helpers Wanted. So I called the ad because I knew what a fire sprinkler was, and lo and behold, I get hired by a union of pipe fitters. And if you don't know what a union is a group of trained people. They train people in a trade, and you get designated raises, and you get treated by a contract. A contract written, you have to be treated like this. So it was a good deal for me down in Florida, and but it was a good deal as far as learning a trade, but it was a bad deal as far as learning about substance abuse, because most of the guys I worked with, they taught me how to use my insurance to get pain medication from doctors. They taught me how to drink. Those guys drank like I had never seen people drink before. So First time I'd ever drank to a little hair of the dog in the morning so I could go to work. Things started to get pretty bad, let me just say. So 3 or 4 years into the union, doing all right, making decent money, but of course not really ever having any money because I was kind of just irresponsible and using, and I got pretty depressed because it was like, you know what? I don't want the life any of these guys have. These guys are miserable people. I mean, they were good people as far as I enjoyed working with them and I was friends. I still talk to some of those guys today, but most of them, not all of them, but most of them were either divorced or hated their families. They hated to go home. They were abusing alcohol and drugs, most of them. And, it just didn't look like much of a future. So, I mean, anyway, so what ended up happening was that led me to trying to seek out kind of my old friends from back in the day and whatnot, which led to this weird incident in my life to where I got a hand on some drugs I hadn't done for a while, ecstasy. I got a whole bunch of ecstasy and I started taking it. And this led to me kind of being kind of out of my mind one night at like 7 a.m. And I knew all my siblings lived at this house together. And I got this seriously kind of delusional thought, intoxicated, that I was going to go to their house. It was a Sunday morning. I was going to make breakfast for everybody and I was going to take them all to church. I just kind of felt like wanted to do that. So it didn't work out that way. What ended up happening is I got pulled over about five minutes from making the house, which was about a half an hour drive. And I was doing 75 and a 35 and I went straight to jail. And the extent of my roadside sobriety test was, sir, look at my finger. You're under arrest for, he just moved it one time. You're under arrest for DUI. So that's how intoxicated I was. So that kind of stopped me, like that accident had stopped me. It just kind of stopped me. I got out of jail and I didn't stop right away, but something kind of significant happened in jail. I was in jail and I really, for the first time in a long time, reached out to God. And I grew up with God. I understood God, and I understood God to a degree. And I said, God, I need help, because I knew that I was in bad shape. But I didn't ask for him to get me out of this problem, this legal problem. I just said, I need help. And I truly believe in my heart I was asking help for my substance abuse. So what ended up happening is a week later, a friend of mine that was a fire sprinkler apprentice with me, he ended up getting fired from his job, and we used drugs together. And he ended up asking me to take him somewhere in order to save his job. And what had happened is his job had made a deal with him. If he goes to AA meetings, then he can save his job. So I didn't look up going to an AA meeting myself. I just did it to support a friend. I went to my first AA meeting intoxicated with my buddy. And I don't know what happened in that meeting or whatever, but all I know is like the next week, through a pastor that was praying for me and encouraging me, I started to get hope again, because there were people that had these problems that weren't dealing with those problems as far as using anymore. And so this pastor asked me, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to come back to church, but I'm also going to go back to this place where I met these people. So I ended up going back. And this kind of was an amazing event, because I went back without my friend, and I went by myself, and I picked up what they call the surrender chip, or the white chip, and I stayed sober at that point for 6 years. I picked up that chip, and if you've ever seen the movie, I always explain people this way, if you've ever seen the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey, I became a yes man. Whatever those people in those groups told me to do, I just did it. It was almost like an act of blind faith. They said, hey, give me your phone number. Here's my phone number. Hey, would you come over here and make coffee? I'll make coffee. Hey, would you come over and go play bingo with us? Yeah, I'll go play bingo with you weirdos, I just started doing this, and my life took off.
Did you say B11 chicken legs? That's what they do in the Midwest. That's the truth.
No, I don't remember that. But I just remember having this kind of unabashed, willingness to do whatever they said. So I did, and things went well. And I actually, 2 years into this, I decided I wanted to be in ministry, and I quit my job as a journeyman. I'd become a journeyman at this point. And I went to Bible college in South Carolina. And at 26 years old, I entered as a freshman in Bible college. And 3 years later, I did it in 3 years. I graduated with a bachelor's in Bible, double majored in humanities, and I had a minor in biblical languages. So I'll just, we got a break coming up, but I graduated high school, and I will pick up the story when I get back, but stay with us. Hope you're being entertained. Anyway, we'll be back in a minute.
Jimmy, I can't believe, golly, how are you alive? Boy, I'll tell you what.
You're about to hear the worst part.
God was looking out for you. And I'll tell you what, it's amazing you say that, like I've always said. God has a way of touching people, whether you like it or not. And you're going to still go through some trials and tribulations, but eventually you break it. I'll tell you what, Jim, and I mean this, and that's what I like about you. You speak from the heart. You're an honest guy. And to go into this, to say, I care about these people because I was there. It's like that baseball pitcher who now I forget his name, but they called him Coke bottles because he had very thick glasses. And because of his eyesight, his appearance, he began drinking heavily. And he also had issues. He could throw it 100 miles an hour. You didn't know where it was going. And eventually it knocked him out of baseball. With the drinking already leading up to this, and then it got even worse after baseball, he should have died. But somehow, some way, like you, he stumbled into something that brought him close to God. And there were people that knew him that laughed. They're like, oh, come on. Are you kidding me? This is a joke. And yet, he cleaned himself up. He straightened out his life. He said, what really made me straighten up, I was able to look at myself in the mirror and say I was a drunk. And I had to stop it.
Yeah.
I have to stop this, and God's going to help me. He turned his life around, cleaned himself up, and became a counselor for players that had issues with alcohol. And when someone asked him in later life, why would you do this? You were involved in all this. You got out of it. You would think, I want to leave that behind. He said, no. He said, because when I see an individual, whether it's a baseball player or an everyday Joe in that position, that's me. I see myself, and it's time for me to clean it up.
Yeah.
And he said, I went into it with an open mind, not to judge, but to tell people, you know what? I've been there. I've done that. I've screwed up. I have failed. I'm no good. But God saw it in me to turn myself around. You can do it too if you believe. He saved a lot of lives. And like I said, it takes a big man to stand up and say, hey, you know what? I'm not good. I'm no good.
It does.
That's why I respect you, man.
They call that the first step. You got to admit it, that this is your...
You got to. Because I'm telling you, Jimmy, there are so many phony people in the world. It's a shame that people have to be that way. But you know what? It's the way God... Like I've always said, people say, well, why does God let things happen? Well, I always look at God like George Burns. And I'm being serious. I'm not joking around.
I watched those movies 1,000 times.
And
I loved them.
And in my heart, I really believe that he he's amused, he's got a sense of humor. He lets things play out, but because he loves you, and if he sees that you're really, really, really trying hard and that the sincerity is here in your heart, he will be there and he will help you through it. It's like one minister said one time during a sermon, he said, and this goes for me too, he said, I can stand up here and talk the word of God and make you believe this, that, and the other. And he said, in all reality, let me give this to her. But he said, I could lie to you because I'm not transparent. But to God, I'm transparent. and he's going to look at my heart, and he's going to see how sincere I really am, or am I a phony? And I can't fool God. And there's a lot of truth in that, Jimmy.
There's a lot of us that try to fool him, too.
That's exactly right.
To qualify for the job, the company says you have to be outgoing, but not annoying.
Mike Riley, MCN News.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, my comments are off on here, but I can see them over here. I'm seeing them, but I see all my family commenting. Glad you're here, reliving it with me.
Contemporary sounds. Something for everyone with Knee Deep in Bluegrass. Catch Knee Deep in Bluegrass Sunday afternoons 1 to 3, right here on WATA, 1450 AM and 96.5.
WSSC TV, Severe Weather Center 9, High Country Weather.
A mostly cloudy sky is going to hang around for the rest of the day today. There will be a small chance for just a stray downpour to sneak in. Not expecting much today, but it does.
You better come back. It's about to end.
And the weekend. Low 70s today, same temperatures tomorrow, but keep the umbrellas with you. More scattered showers and thunderstorms will likely pop up tomorrow. Some could be strong. And same chance from severe weather.
Karen wasn't thinking.
Monday for High Country Radio.
All right, here we go.
This is W.
Hey folks, welcome back to Recovery Talk, Open Help for the Hurting. You know this show is brought to you by Freedom Auto Tech, which is the official show's sponsor. They're a professional garage here in town, ready to fix your car if you got a problem. But you can know as a customer, the profits and proceeds are going to support men in Christian recovery through Freedom Farm Ministries. Freedom Farm Ministries is a great cause. You'll hear in my story, as I'm telling you today, it was the catalyst that brought me to where I am today. And it continues to provide an environment for that for many men every year. And so we could use your support, but you know, come get your car fixed and know you're supporting us at the same time. Freedom Auto Tech, their phone number is 828-355-4434. It's 828-355-4434. So my story, I'm basically just fast forward through college. I loved college. You know, this is the first time I loved school, and I kind of loved it because, I mean, I'm not, you know, again, I don't like to try to sound boastful of myself, but I was quite popular, and I found out that I had a brain that I didn't realize I ever had. I literally had to take permission. I had to get permission from counselors to take the course loads that I took. Sometimes I took almost double course loads. That's why I was able to graduate in 3 years. I went to Europe 3 times because I was a humanities major. I traveled all over Europe, studied art. I had a fantastic time. But this is what I tell people. In college, I learned this. A lot of people, you get asked this question if you've had a drug problem and you've been sober for some time. They always ask you, how do you know you'll never go back? So there's a little bit of problem with that. You don't want to sound overconfident that you know you'll never go back, but you also don't want to sound like you don't have any kind of hope. So I used to tell people, something that I have one of these fundamental beliefs in my head that you cannot unconvince me from. I am convinced that I have no way to relationship with God without a Savior. And I'm convinced of that. There's no way I can bring anything to the table for God to save me, right? I needed someone else to do that. I was convinced of that, right? And so that's why I used to tell people, you can't unconvince me of that. So that's why I kind of feel that I'm going to never have a problem with substance abuse again. Anyway, what ended up happening, though, was I graduated college. Between my last 2 semesters of college, I was in a car accident. The car accident led to me having 2 artificial discs put in my spine. It also led to me being on pain medication, which at the time I justified abusing. I told myself that I always had a high tolerance, so as long as I took as much as I was allowed to within a day, and never more, then I wasn't truly abusing. I was just medicating myself the way my body chemistry allows. So that's what I did for a little while. So basically, if I was allowed to, 6 Vicodin, 8 Vicodin a day, I'd take them all at one time and just not take any more the rest of the day. And I was like, I'm not abusing them. I just have a high tolerance for pain medication. Anyway, that led to me having surgery, and after the surgery, no pain medication, so I wasn't on them anymore. So this actually kind of led to a really bad mindset, because now I felt like, you know what, I had them, and then I put them down, and now I'm not using them. So a little overconfidence. Also, something that happened to me during Bible college, I was sucking up the accolades so much that it became addicting in of itself. I loved telling people, kind of like at the beginning of this. I don't really like telling my story too much. I loved telling it back then because I used to love the oohs and ahs people would give me. Like, I can't believe that happened to you. I can't believe where you were. And there's nothing wrong with people doing those things. I'm saying that I was receiving it in a way where it was making me feel important, okay? And that's when it was working against me. So basically, after 3 years of telling these stories, I was getting tired of my own stories. So I'm ripe for an event to happen. The event is I get this accident. I abuse these pain medications, but then I put them down, so I'm not abusing them. And then I get a settlement from this accident. I get a settlement, which after the lawyers are paid, doctors' bills are paid, I have a couple $100,000 to my name. So what do? I need a new story, and I'm arrogant. I'm spiritually arrogant. I'm humanly arrogant, and I'm overconfident when it comes to substance abuse. So I needed a new story. A friend of mine was going to start a business in a place called Jaco Beach, Costa Rica. So this sounded really exciting to me because it sounded like a cool story, you know. Hey, you know, I own a business down in Costa Rica. So I asked him if I could be his partner in this venture. And so I used some of this money, half of it, to go down to Costa Rica after graduating Bible. So here it is, the Bible college guy, going to be in ministry. What I end up doing, I end up moving to Costa Rica and starting a business, and it was basically a sports bar. I opened up a sports bar with my friend, and I moved down there, and I was down there for about 6 months before I convinced myself that, you know what, and this place was a pit of debauchery for me, okay? This place, you want to talk about an underbelly of just evil that existed there. And there's beautiful things there, too. It's a beautiful country. But for someone like me, what I saw was the underbelly. And what ended up happening was down there, I convinced myself that I'm sure I could drink normally because I was before just stupid and uneducated, and I was young and irresponsible. Now look at me. I have a college degree. I'm smart. I'm smarter than anybody I know in my own mind. And I'm much more responsible. Look at me. I'm an international business owner, you know. So I started drinking down in Costa Rica, and I immediately woke up the beast, okay? Now, I will say that, you know, I think there is a genetic disposition to people with substance abuse, and especially if you have that, doesn't mean you're going to become an addict or an alcoholic, but once you've crossed the line, you've opened up that gate, okay, in your body chemistry. I think that there's a hook in there from the substance abuse that is just, the only thing that's ever worked for me is abstinence. You know, I hear they're trying to teach people how to moderate that kind of stuff. I don't even see that ever being able to work for me. But anyway, so what ended up happening, the first time I started drinking there, I went straight to the races. Within a week, cocaine down there costs about $10 for the strongest, for what's comparable to about $70 here, for some of the strongest cocaine I've ever had in my life. So what that ended up is starting a 3-year downward spiral of me drinking every single day. And I wasn't a kind of person that liked to do cocaine all day. I just liked to do enough so I could drink all day. So I drank all day long, and I did cocaine, and I lived this way for years. I lived this way to the point to where I was involved in a relationship with a woman that I'm not going to tell in the air how terrible it was, but just think of the worst thing you could possibly think of, and that was that bad. And I got into a fight with her in a hotel parking lot. I was not physically fighting. I've never hit a woman or anything like that. But anyway, some people didn't like me fighting with her, so those people took it upon themselves to beat the heck out of me. And so they did. They beat me so bad in the hotel parking lot down there in Costa Rica that they closed both my eyes, and I wasn't able to open them for at least a week. And when that happened, because I was so dependent on alcohol, I actually had to be hospitalized because of going through delirium tremors at that time. Anyway, you'd think that's enough to stop me. It wasn't. It was enough for my partners in Costa Rica to send me home, though. They said, look, you need to go home because some of the underbelly started to warn them that I was making too much of a scene in the underbelly, that they were going to just erase me out if I continued to make a scene. I was running credit with drug dealers. I was not in a good spot. So I came home, but nothing got better at the right off the bat. I actually came home in a terrible state, and this is the easiest way to explain it. No one was going to tell me anything about God because I knew more than you. I had a degree that said so. And no one's going to tell me anything about sobriety because I had 6 years of sobriety at one time, and I had been very successful during that time. So what are you going to tell me? And that's the attitude I had. I went right back to working in the pipe fitting industry. That lasted about a year. The drinking continued. I was hospitalized finally after about a year being back in Florida. I spent 14 days in the hospital for alcohol dependency. It took them that long to get me off the amount of alcohol I was drinking. That was probably one of the scariest detoxes I've ever been through. If anyone wants to tell, in my opinion, alcohol detox is the worst detox to go through. After that, I was afraid to drink. And so what I did is I went back to my old regular, which was pain medication, which I'm an IV drug user, pain medication guy. And that started about a year and a half of an absolute downward spiral using pain medication in Florida during the height of the pill mill scene down there. Anyway, if you've ever taken a 10 milligram Percocet, okay, if you guys know what a 10 milligram Percocet was, the height of my addiction, I was taking about 90 of those a day. So that's how much pain medication I was injecting into myself at the height of my addiction. I still to this day don't know how I was able to keep that up. There were many times attempts at sobriety in Florida. I did go to a couple programs. I met some good people at those. I had small periods of sobriety. None of it worked for long term. I would always go right back to it after a little bit of time. There was lots of trials and errors. I was hospitalized about 3 times for suicide attempts. One actual suicide attempt where I took 3 months worth of medication and I was put into a coma for 4 days. My organs internally started to shut down. My mom's probably worst moment in her life. I've taken years off her life from the anxiety that I've caused her by being bedside with me when I'm trying to kill myself. I've slit my wrists. I've done everything you could possibly think about when it comes to trying to bring attention and cry out for help, but I really legitimately tried to kill myself that one time. But anyway, that just ended me up in hospitals. I got pneumonia a couple times from a substance abuse in intensive care. It was not good. All up to an event, a final event that I'll be able to explain to you when we come back from this break. And it was the final event that got me to where I am today. So we'll finish up my story when we come back from this break. Stay with us. There's just one more section to go.
Wow, Jimmy. And what did she do while they were beating your butt?
She was in a hotel room. So.
Holy cow. Are you kidding me?
No.
That is crazy, bud.
Yeah, these guys were Colombians, and
oh, they're not nice people.
No, they
especially with a Yankee.
Yeah, there's a lot. A quarter of Costa Rica is expats. So there's a lot of expats down there that are down there because they've got a bad reputation here.
Oh yeah,
and they go down there. So a lot of perverts, a lot of people like that, and if they got a word that they had a pervert living in town, that pervert would disappear. There was a guy came from Connecticut. He was the first beer he had was at my bar, and he was there for about 4 months. And 2 months went by, nobody saw him. His name was Arnie. Nobody knew where he was. He was 60, mid-60s. One day they found him in the water reservoir tank on the side of the house that he was written, stabbed 42 times. And word is that they had found out that he was a pervert, messing around with boys underage. And so those guys made him go away.
We have had several customers walk through our doors for the first time because they heard our ad on the radio. As a result of
that is insane.
We were able to develop relationships with these customers.
Dude, how the heck did you?
With us over the years. We here at
I don't know.
Got right to the edge, man. So
you ain't good, Jimmy. Here we go. 3.
Welcome back to Recovery Talk, the show brought to you by Freedom Auto Tech, which is a local auto shop here in town, ready to give you professional mechanical services to your car. and you can know as a customer at the same time. You're going the profits proceeds are going to support a good cause, which is Freedom Farm Ministries, which provides long-term Christian recovery for men. So if you got a car problem, give them a call, 828-355-4434. That's 828-355-4434. Give them a call. Know that you get your car fixed and support a good cause at the same time. All right, so to finish up my story, I was in Florida. Lots of ups and downs. Well, not really any ups. There were some times where I wasn't, as bad, and then really bad times. I haven't told you all the stories, but trust me, none of it was good. Lots of hospital visits. I actually moved up to Boone with $65,000 on my credit of hospital bills, unpaid hospital bills. Anyway, one of them, I almost lost my hand, Mike. You can see that scar right there was from an infection from needles, and I told them that I had gotten bit by a dog, and I finally admitted what had happened. I had finally admitted what had happened when they told me they were going to give me 75 shots for rabies in my stomach. I was like, okay. It wasn't a dog. But anyway, a good friend of mine who was the pastor of the church I grew up in at the time, not the pastor I grew up with, but he had become the new pastor. That pastor I grew up with had moved on to another job in Alabama, and I still talk to him today. But my buddy Omar, he and his wife felt convicted to try to help me because they knew that I'd gone to Bible college, and they were like, we need to try to help him. So they did, and they came up with a plan. They had a studio apartment behind their house next to the pool. So they moved me into the apartment. And they gave me a job at the church. So they kind of kept 24-hour surveillance on me, and I fellowshipped with them, right? So that was going on for a little bit of time. But I was not done with my conniving. So I ended up getting drugs. Which led to a Saturday morning when we were all supposed to go to a green market together. His kids that adored me at the time, I haven't seen them in years, but they were banging on my door for me to get up so we can get going to this market. They were very excited, and they opened the door finally and found me sprawled out on the floor, overdosed in his apartment. That led to another trip to the hospital. I was told bedside that I had a heart attack, but I found out actually last year that I did not have a heart attack. I had an episode, whatever they call that. But that led to me being asked to leave his house and being fired from my last job. And really, at that point, a very low point in my life. He actually came to my bedside in the hospital and said, "Hey, man, I know you know the Lord." He said, but I just think that maybe you are not in fellowship with him because you just haven't repented in a long time. He's like, would you like to do that? I'd like to sit with you as a friend and maybe just walk you through that. And I arrogantly looked at him and said, hey, you know what? If I ever want to do something like that, you'll be the first guy I call. That's where I was. Anyway, what ended up happening was 2 weeks later, I was living in an abandoned house with a friend of mine. Nowhere to go. I did have unemployment money coming. I had some money. We were using drugs. Right out of the hospital, I was using drugs, and a cousin of mine called me that lived in Charlotte, and she said, look, I've heard you got a problem. Would you like to get some help? And anything was going to be better than living in this abandoned house, so I was like, sure. So she said, call this place up here in Boone, North Carolina. I did. I got into a train. I came up here, and, the long story, the short of it all is I've never left. But what happened here? What happened when I came up here? Here I am, a Bible college grad at another rehab. I'm like this weird anomaly. I'm like this guy that has the credentials of a pastor that can't stop sticking needles in his arm. So what do we do with this guy? Nobody did anything specific. I'm going to say the Lord did something. I explain it like Christianity and God was all these puzzle pieces that I knew, right? But I didn't know the picture. I didn't have the picture in front of me where I can put it all together. So this place helped that all get put together, and it finally did. And this is basically the short of it. When people ask me the same question they used to ask me online, how do you know you'll never go back to that? I don't want to have a non-answer, but I also don't want to sound unconfident. So before I used to tell people that you can't unconvince me that when I die I need Jesus. I need I need him in order to make it, right? I knew that for sure. So what ended up happening is at Freedom Farm, the Lord used this place to show me that I need him every day to live life. And I did not know that before. I don't think it was the fault of the Bible college. I don't think it was it just never clicked until I came up here and I was finally humbled to where I realized I needed him every day. And once I discovered that, my life changed. It changed dramatically. I ended up getting married a year and a half after being up here. I have 2 children now, a 7-month and a daughter about to turn 4. And you know what? I get to wake up every day and try to help identify all these puzzle pieces in Guy's life, because I had the same problem. And I try to point them to the picture that brings it all together. That's how I describe what I get to do on a daily basis. There's also other little things here and there, but that's the heart of what we get to do at Freedom Farm. We get to show people the picture, the one who puts all the puzzle pieces together. I can't fix nobody. You can't fix anybody. I can point you to the one that can. And that's what I get to do for a living. Okay, so I got time. So anyway,
tell a great story. I got you posted. Don't worry about it. Just talk.
I'm in a weird spot because I usually can glance at the clock and I see the time and whatnot. But anyway, when I came here, I will tell you this to end the show. The last 5 minutes. I came here and I really I didn't know what I was going to do for a living or anything, but I was just okay being up here. And the place, was run by a man by the name of Robbie Colley. And, there were people saying, hey, man, aren't you going to, move on with your life or whatever? And I kept telling them, I was like, you know what? I kind of feel like back in my union days, I kind of felt like I was in an apprenticeship, right? Mm-hmm. I was like in this apprenticeship where, because I didn't actually cover how I'm now running the place. But I was a resident here now, and I started to get responsibility here, and I started to teach classes, and I started to just be a part of the leadership framework of this program. And then I kind of felt myself underneath being trained by the guy that founded the place. His name is Robbie Colley. His wife helped found it too, Rita Colley. About 4 years into my tenure with him and my apprenticeship, I like to say, there was basically an event that ended up transferring me into the executive director role here at Freedom Farm, and I've been here ever since. So I came here in February of 2011, and I've never left. I've been here ever since. And in this kind of crazy work, people, I just like to tell people that I get
relax. Yeah. Just talk. I'm watching the clock.
Yeah, I get people.
You got 3 minutes.
I get people that kind of talk to me like I'm a bit of a martyr in a way that I feel like I don't know how you do this type of work or anything. I just want people to know that are listening and watching that I don't see myself as a martyr at all. I really do truly see myself a blessed person to be able to do this. And in anything that you're called to do by God, He gives you what you need to do it. So you don't go into it feeling like you're a martyr. So I appreciate people's encouragement when it comes to dealing with this, with whatever hard work you're called to do. And it is very difficult work because sometimes you want to be the one to be able to fix them, and you want to employ tactics of maybe just shaking them and screaming at them, like, "Would you just listen to me?" But it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So anyway, I don't feel I'm a martyr, but you know what? This little community up here, especially through the church that we bring them into, which is Alliance Bible Fellowship, has just embraced us to such a degree that we feel like part of this community. We feel that we are embraced and encouraged. We just did a fundraising campaign because we had a septic tank, and people came out of the woodworks to donate to this campaign, and we've almost hit the $15,000 goal.
Not surprised.
So anyway, I just got the 1 minute flash. Thanks for listening. Hopefully it brought some hope and help for hurting people. If there's everything I could do for you personally, my information is easy to find on freedomfarmministries.org, or you can find me on Facebook easily. I don't have a lot of privacy settings or anything like that, but I live to try to, like I said, help other people that are struggling from the same bondage that I came from, because I know that once you get get someone pointed to that picture and those puzzle pieces get together, those people that come from this bondage, they become almost unstoppable for the cause of good in this world. And right now, with the scourge of addiction affecting us the way it is, there's a lot of it needed, and you can tell it's coming down the pipe. So, guys, thank you. We got a couple minutes.
Dude, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I got 30 seconds. It was kind of interesting telling my story, sitting here by. And Mike, thank you.
It's a great story.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I've said to you off the air, it's great to see a man that was in your situation to give back and to help others.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's a blessing to do so. So thanks again for supporting the show. Thanks for being here. And pass the video around, tell your friends about it, and come back next week when I have a guest, a guy that actually graduated the program about 5 years ago. So he's going to be with me next week. Hopefully he'll keep his commitment. But I'll see you next Thursday for another episode of Recovery Talk. Thanks, folks.
Great story. Great story. And that's what I'm saying. I mean,